Hello there and welcome to Tom's Warhammer Minis. The Ravager gunship is arrow-swift. Armed with 3 devastatingly powerful heavy weapons, it provides the Drukhari of armoured fire support in their terrifying cruel real space raids. Now in this tutorial, we're taking their centrepiece model and painting it up in the Kabal the Poison Tongue scheme. Naturally, it's contrast only. To make it even more impressive, there are no armour highlights. And you'll understand the process if you've seen my tutorials before, but if not, you'll soon learn. And I'll show you how to make it look absolutely flawless while keeping it really simple. It is a complex, challenging model, and I'm going to show you how to paint it in roughly around 2 days, rather than umpteen weeks that it would traditionally take, and have it looking absolutely incredible. The ultra focus here being the blue. Get it right and it looks breathtaking. Now there are sub-assemblies required to get it to this stage. I've kept during the process the main pilot and the front gunner separate, but that entire rest of the model has been fully assembled, and you'll see that when I show you how it's done. It's time to make this Drukhari model look easy to paint. So grab your paints, grab your brushes, let's get hobbying. And we begin. Before we start our Ravager, there's a few points to note before we even get any paint on the model. So it is fully assembled apart from the gunner at the front and the pilot at the back. Those two, I haven't even built them yet, but what I'm going to do is they're going to be primed in white scar, like this model is. I'm going to just put a tiny bit of super glue on their feet onto separate bases, and I can just snip them off at the very end and attach them with super glue to their rightful positions. The other two gunners, now on the sides, they are fully built and all assembled inside. Now, there's a couple of notes to point. I did find this model was a little bit greasy on this side. Didn't realise, it was part of when it came. Didn't realise it until I started spraying. So it has slightly chalked and cracked when I primed it. But it's one of those things where you can still use paints to fix it around. It is fully primed. It is glued and attached to the base. And there's going to be a lot of contrast painting to do. So with that out of the way, let's get started. And we're starting with our first layer of paint. And to begin with, we are going to be doing the Kabal, the Poison Tongue, and it is that nice bright vivid blue. Obviously it's a lot darker, and if you've seen my tutorials before, you know what I'm doing. If you don't, you're going to be wondering what the heck is going on. Nice and simple, contrast paints work really well with an underlayer. We're going to build up the blues to a darker, because contrast painting, you are painting from light to dark, which is the opposite of traditional painting of dark to light. Now, there are things to note, we'll get to those in a minute. To begin with, the mix. We're going to take 1 part of Frost Tart to roughly 3 parts of Lamy Medium. And I've created a big pool of this, so it's a rough mixture poured into a palette. But it's roughly 3 parts Lamy Medium, 1 part Frost Tart, and simply we're painting this straight over all the blue armour. Now, obviously, with armour, you're going to get areas where it's pooling, and it's not going to look right. And I have kind of rushed this, and there's a reason why. Doesn't have to be neat. As long as it's not pooling excessively, these kind of areas where it's dried and it's pooled slightly in certain areas, it's not going to matter. Now you'll understand this if you see my other tutorials, but we're going to be painting over that in the next step and again in the next step. So this is just an underlayer just to get that blue tone in place. Now there's a couple of points to note. I would recommend using a small brush in a sense to get to certain areas. One that is battered and beaten. So there's areas, for instance, you've got these weapon platforms here. Getting to the inside is tricky, but it's doable. You just got to get in from every single angle imaginable. You will get there. But with an old battered brush, you've got nothing to lose in the sense it's old, it's beaten. You don't need to keep the firm bristles. It doesn't matter if it's damaged already, essentially. So there's no worrying about damaging it further. Kabalites are painted entirely in blue. Don't worry if you catch it on the weapons and stuff. We're going to be doing different colours. The only areas we really need to be careful on is the areas we're going to paint in red later. So essentially the sail and the flag. But we can afford to be messy, certainly in the metallic areas. Another point to note, you've got this little bit here that I've done in blue. To get to the underside, obviously we're not going to be able to fit a brush in and bend it. But you can get through the little grills here. Just simply with an old battered brush again, we're just dabbing the paint down just to get it in there. It is very doable in that sense. It just takes time, but even when it's fully assembled like this, you can absolutely get to every part. And that's really what I want to showcase here. So start with that, get it all done, and we'll move on to the next stage. Next up, we're adding to the next blue layer. And again, yes, it's looking a bit messy. but you gotta trust the process. In the next stage, this all gets fixed entirely. But we need the kind of blue that's going to be our edge highlight, and that's why we did the frost art. This is just, frost art was the under there, this is tinting the frost art, and the colour you're seeing now is going to be the edge highlights all over, but it's sort of mid-tone blue almost. When we add the next colour, it just becomes dark and perfect, exactly like the box art for the Kabal, the Poisoned Heart. Colour we need here is Assaman Blue. We're taking one part of this to roughly 2 parts of Lamy Medium. So it's thinned down, but it's not too thin, and you'll get this kind of colour. So like I said, we haven't got to worry too much about pooling. Like you can see here as an example, this is all going to get fixed. And again, using an old brush as we get into the details on the insides of this bit, the insides of this bit, those kind of things, the brush is going to get battered and ruined. So using an old one that's already in that state, it just makes sense. Take your time, trust the process. That's all we can say. And if you see my other tutorials in this colour scheme, you know exactly how it's going to end up looking. And next up, we're doing the next stage of blue, and as you can see, this is where it completely transforms. Where it was completely all over the place and messy before, there's a reason. This is it. So to begin with, let's focus on the mix. And if you've seen my other tutorials, when it's focusing on the Kabal, the Poison Tongue, you know exactly the mix here. But it's 4 parts Leviathan Blue with 1 part of Storm Fiend. This is the richness that we see here, whereas the Leviathan is the darkness, and 1 part of Lamy Medium to help with the flow and give us a lot more control. Simply every flat surface edge up to the actual edge itself. We're not painting the edges, and that gives us this automatic highlight that's in place. Now, yeah, it gets tricky as you get to the insides. It's completely doable. However, there are a couple of areas where I've skipped and been a little bit cheeky. So once again, you've got the inside of these. I've just painted it entirely. I'm not worrying about edge highlighting. There's a little bit between, well, the behind bit of the wall section here and here. Same on the other sides. Again, I'm not worrying about a highlight like that. You're not going to see it. I mean, you can see if you really look, but it's just not worth the effort. But the rest of it, you can absolutely reach. My recommendation is just take your time. Do it section by section, take breaks as you need it, just create small mixes here and there. Just don't go too mad in a sense. I've done it all in one go. If that's not for you, just take your time. It's a big model. We don't want to rush it. We want to get this. But it is completely doable, and this is what we get. We're going to shade it down further to enrich that blue a bit more, and that's going to be in the next step. And finally, to finish off our blue armour, we're taking Tyron Blue Shade Paint. Now, give this a very good shake because it can be glossy, but once it's really properly shaken, just apply it over all those blue details, and what it's going to do is one of 2 things. First of all, if it's well shaken, it's going to matte it down, because sometimes with the Lamy Medium that we put in the mixes, it can make it a little bit shiny if you don't shake it well enough, but it will matte it down. But more importantly, it enhances the blue by enriching and giving it a much deeper saturation. So it just gives you this awesome effect. Obviously, the wet bits you're seeing here is where it's still just slightly drying because I've only just applied it. But this is what you get. Nice, brilliant, and vibrant. And then the blue is done. We're moving on to some different colours. Next up, we're going for some good contrasting colours. Now, officially, when you look at the colour scheme of the Kabal, the Poison Tongue, they've got this sort of flesh tone. Not what we're seeing here, but white flesh tone kind of colour for their flags and stuff. But in the interest of contrast, as in not the paint, but contrast of colours, we're going to go red. That's my choice. Of course, you can do whatever you want. But you're going to see it's going to stand out really nicely. Obviously, I'm going orange first. And this is the principle that we've done on this. We're doing this as the under there. We're putting another paint over this to create this as the edge highlight colour. And the rest of it's going to be red. The colour I'm using is Gryph-hound Orange mixed with Lamy Medium. 1-to-1 ratio. Nice and simple. It just keeps things neat on this large flat area. Now, it does look a bit patterned. It's not meant to be. Again, that's where I explained at the very beginning. I had some kind of weird problem with the plastic. It's not a me issue. It was just the product itself. We're going to sort it out. I had an issue on here. As you can see, you don't even notice it. Even when you really look close up. And I've got pretty good eyes at close up. You can't see any problems now. So we're going to be doing the exact same on this one. But I've done this on the flag and the main sail bit here. let it dry, we'll move on to the next stage. The perfect contrast to this rich dark blue is a bright, vibrant blood red. I'm probably going to surprise you here because it's not Blood Angel's red we're going with. In fact, the best paint to use here is going to be Bile red. Now, you're not really going to notice that orange now. We've painted it up to the highlights. You can just sort of see there. And there's not really much highlights in that sense, in the sense of edge highlights. It's the majority of the area we're going to be painting in Bile red. But that orange as an under there just makes it really blood red and vivid. It is absolutely gorgeous and contrasts so perfectly against this blue. So take your time, get that done, and that's all of our red details done. I find with these big models, keeping the details nice and simple really works wonders here. And you've got this exceptional colour scheme. Sometimes just dulling it down ever so slightly in other areas just really enhances the overall look. So to begin with, we're going with silver details. Now this is the entire under section. I'm keeping it all the same, all simple. You've got like this bar in the middle, all the chains, you know, the spikes, the poles, this kind of stuff. The seats that the Kabalite gunners are sitting on. I mean, I might do a bit more later on, but we're just getting this big section done to begin with. In the sense that I'm leaving the Kabalites to the very end, and I'll showcase them at the end too. But keeping it nice and simple, we're going to take Iron Warriors as our base coat. Once that's completely dry, I've shaded it all with Nuln Oil. And once that's completely dry, taking a small dry brush, because I don't want to catch any of the blue areas or the red, I've taken Stormhost Silver and just simply given a very light dry brush over all those details, finishing off the silver entirely. Nice and simple, but it just really enhances the overall look. And next up, we're going to do some gold bronze-like details. The colour I'm using to begin with as a base coat is going to be Brass Scorpion. It works so effectively with this blue. Now, we've got the whole decking, and I'm going to go through that in a minute. I've done the buttons on the consoles and the switches, that kind of stuff. You've got, depending on the RAM that you choose, the sigils there. And there's little bits on the Drukhari helmet. So you could have a sigil there, and it's the sort of top parts on the horns. And then you've got the knee pad parts. So that's what we're base coating. There's a couple of things to note with the actual flooring. So first of all, at the back, you can just see there, you can reach underneath. So that's important to do. Obviously this section we're just base coating. The floor on the actual center part, that's absolutely normal, that's fine. It's got a lot of recessed detailing. You've got this top bit and then you've got a bit underneath. Now this is one of those sort of daylight bulbs from a light box that's shining straight through. You can just about, in this good light, see there's a bit of white underneath. Now that's where we primed the underfloor to begin with. It's obviously gone through underneath. You can't get a brush in there. It's one of those things. You're either going to want to paint it first if you're really a perfectionist. For me, in normal light, you do not notice. You'll notice potentially as the artist, but other people aren't going to notice. You can reach a brush in just to get the bit around here, just underneath, which you can, you know, anyone can see. That bit you can cover fine. But to be honest, it's really going to be me personally notice this model. Anyone else, they're not going to be looking directly like that. They're going to be looking at it like this. So those are the important things to note. And then I have shaded all those details. Now the colour I've used here is an old one. It's not sold anymore. It is Reikland Flesh Shade Gloss. It's up to you whether you want it glossy. You can just go with normal Reikland Flesh Shade. If you haven't got the gloss one, but you want it shiny like this, then you can just add a gloss varnish like Art Coat over the top once you're done. It's essentially the same thing. But that's what I've gone with, Reikland Flesh Shade with a bit of gloss varnish. I've done that over all of those details. Next up, we're moving on to some further base coating colours. And to start with, we're going to focus on the little Drukhari units. Now I'm going to show the other two, the main gunner and the pilot at the end. Go into a bit more depth. But you've got these little satchel bags, one on each side, on both characters. Simply pick them out in Gore-Grunter fur. Moving on from that, if you've done the spikes, which are optional, some have heads, a simple base coat of Skeleton Horde. And just to note, one of them, which is this one here, you have got a servo skull. Well, it's not quite a servo skull, but it's got the, the eyepiece. We are going to pick that out later on. It's not, I haven't missed it, but we just want to get that colour all over because that's going to be done in metallics. And then we're focusing on the weapons. This is the two weapons on the rack, if you've chosen them, and then the 3 guns. I'm going to add more to it, but to begin with, I just want to show it in its first stage. We've taken Black Templar, thinned it down into a 1-to-1 mix with Lamy Medium, apply it straight over. Now there are a couple of areas where I've caught some blue paint on. It's not going to be a problem. We're going to be building up that darker layer of black. There you go, you can see an example there. It's not going to be noticeable by the time we've finished a bit. You're going to get little bits of pooling here and there. It's not going to be a problem as long as it's not excessively pooling. And that part there is not excessively pooling because we're going to be building up that layer, leaving the edge highlight in place where, if anything, you'll just need a small little dry brush at the end. But that's just one layer of Black Templar thinned down. We're going to add a couple more, and I'll explain that in the next step. Next up, let's focus on the weapons. I'm keeping it simple. Taking that Black Templar mix that we've done before, I've applied it again, and then for a third time. Now, like we did for the armor, where we avoided the edges, I've not done this on these weapons. None of the edges have been avoided, but what I have done, to explain it better, I painted the edges in the entire model. I just haven't gone heavily on the edges. I've gone slightly heavier on the flatter surfaces in the other bits, but not too heavy where it pulls. So you just got to keep an eye on it. It did get a bit shiny, so I've applied a varnish. You can see it's still slightly drying where the light's just hitting it there. But that finishes off our weapons. At this stage, unless you want to give it a dry brush, you don't particularly need to. It's got a lot of natural highlights in place from the thinned down Black Templar. Now to fix up the guns here, I've taken the brass scorpion into those barrel recesses that you can see here, and you just need to be careful when you do it on the inside, but you can absolutely reach it from different angles. I've covered that with brass scorpion. And then our actual highlight for our skulls, I've taken a very gentle dry brush of pallid witch flesh. Now, if you could imagine, I've got this model sat down with my right hand holding a dry brush because I'm right-handed. I'm using my left hand, once this is my right, to hold this steady because I don't want it to snap, and just done a very gentle dry brush of all the bits. And all I've done is taken Iron Warriors, once that's done, and just paint in the eye part of the servo skull. Once that's done, we can move on to the next stage. Our next few details finish off the vehicle. We'll then move on to the characters, but let's focus on these last few colours first. To begin with, I'm taking Evil Sun Scarlet, and we've got a couple of select areas where we're applying this. Firstly, for our Kabalite gunners, I've base coated the eyes. Nice and simple, we just need a small dot, and they are easy to reach. And I've also applied a small dot just on the eye up here for our little servo skull. Now, once that's done, I've gone a little bit further for the eyes of the Kabalite warriors and just applied an even smaller dot of Wild Rider Red. Moving on from that, we're focusing on more of our silver details, and this time we're going bright. I'm taking Iron Hand Steel. Now, the reason behind this kind of theory, we've got this dark vivid blue, and the one colour that doesn't really go well with blue is silver, because they're both in cold tones, they don't really stand out. However, we can take advantage of Iron Hand Steel being really bright silver, because this is a dark blue. Bright silver stands out. So on our ram, all the little spikes picked out. You've got these two central columns here that are holding up the sail. They've got little spikes there too. There's not too many little spikes, but it's just things like that. Our other spikes are on the actual Kabalite warriors themselves. So things like the shoulder pads and the little spikes on their knees. Just little tiny, picking out. We haven't got to shade them. We haven't got to highlight them. We'll keep the brightness of our base coated silver. And then next up, we're taking Moot Green. And just applying this very carefully, just on the little energy cables that are on their shoulder pads. It's always their left-handed shoulder that has them. So again, same on this one. You've got one there. Just a simple base coat is all we're doing there. Just being very careful, very neat. And then lastly, we've got the sails. And obviously I've applied the transfers from the sheet that you get in the box. If you're obviously following this is the symbol for the Kabal, the Poison Tongue. This is a generic one. If you check out my Instagram, I've just uploaded a little post that just goes in depth, just briefly, of what each transfer is on that sheet, because it's not actually explained. Now to apply them, I've gone rather old school, nice and simple. Take this area, for example, this part of the sail, obviously I'm not doing those two. Just layered a thin layer of hard coat all over, just to set the area, makes it nice and smooth. Apply the transfer using water in the classic methods. Once it's set, once it's dry, I've taken Storm Shield and applied it over that entire area to seal it. It's classic, it's old school, it's easy to do. And that's what we get. Next up, we're going to move on to our Kabalite Gunner and Pilot. And next up, we're focusing on our two Kabalites, the Gunner and the Pilot. So essentially, What we've done here is it's pretty much identical to what we've already done. Every paint that's been used so far, I've used on the Kabalites. The bits in white is where we're going to slightly differ in the scheme. So all the blue armour, exactly like we've done before. All the silver details, exactly like before. Same as the brass scorpion. All of that the same. The Reichland flesh shade with a little gloss varnish. You've got skeleton horde on the little bone bits here. I've also applied that on the string. The only real difference to note is when we did that Black Templar on the guns earlier, that was thinned down, and I applied it 3 times. I've applied it on the soft seal parts of their armour, because you can actually see this and reach it. You can't on the drivers. It's just there. But I've only done it twice. So it's the gloves, the soft seal armour, that kind of stuff. So build it up to that stage, copying exactly the same as we've done. As you can see, it's identical to everything we've all done, but up to now, it's just those white sections I'm going to do slightly differently. It is going to be red, but it's because we haven't done it yet. And finally, we're finishing off those last details, and I'm showcasing this model because this is where it slightly differs. So to begin with, we're doing the base coats for the cloth, now which traditionally would normally be cream, sort of fleshy cream coloured, but I'm going red, which I've explained in other videos. It contrasts perfectly against that blue. The colour I'm used is Flesh Terror's red, nice and simple. For the plume on the helmet, nice and simple, I'm going slightly different but very similar, Blood Angel's red. And then once it's completely dry, to tie it all together, just very careful edge highlights of Wild Rider red. Again, if you want it more accurate with the cloth, absolutely go with that sort of flesh tone cream colour, but I like the red, it contrasts nicely, and this is what you get. All we need to do now is snip off very carefully these 2 characters, attach them to the actual model, and we are completely done. And there we have it. Our Ravager is complete. And what an insanely breathtaking project this is. And by no means is this model an easy one to paint. It is a rewarding, challenging one. Yet, with the power of contrast in a short space of time, I make the impossible possible. And once again, breaking that all-important myth that you can't paint contrast over vehicles, because guess what? You can, and here's the proof. Now, this tutorial should absolutely inspire anyone who wants to paint the Kabal the Poisoned Tongue. So be sure to give that video a like, but also share, because sharing means others get to see the video, they get to discover the channel, and they get to benefit from all those free tutorials and tips that I provide. Also, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Every bit of support is extremely meaningful, because supporting me does something wonderful, because it means I get to continue supporting you, the awesome Warhammer community, with tutorials exactly like this. So, until the next time, do look after yourselves and happy hobbying.